Hey guys, today we're going to be chatting about recessions, specifically how to prepare for one and what exactly I'm going to be doing. But I also want to hear from you guys. How did you fare in the last recession, and will you be making any changes for the future? Now, I can't say with certainty like when the next recession is going to be or the exact severity. I know that in recent months, there have been talk of an upcoming recession, and most recently I saw an article that said there is going to be a recession for next year based on what economists predict. So there's that. But regardless of when it's happening, they happen naturally as a part of the economic cycle. So the best thing that we can do is to prepare. Now, with that being said, I don't believe you can be 100% prepared. Even if you have your financial life in order, there's always something about life that is highly unpredictable. And I'm going to tell you guys why exactly. So me personally, I've been through two recessions that I can recall. The first one being the Great Recession, which was from the 2007 to 2009-ish era. So this particular recession, I was not financially prepared for it because this was around the time that I was graduating from college, and I remember having a very hard time. In fact, I will never forget, actually. I had a very hard time finding a job. It took me 6 months, 400 and odd job applications, and I know that because I kept a spreadsheet because that's the kind of person that I am. And out of those 400 jobs, I think I got like 4 interviews, and one of them allowed me or offered me a job. So it was a very difficult time. During the 6 months, I was, however, like able to function because I was basically still a kid in some way, so I had my family to support me, and that they provided me shelter, and they paid for my food, etc. Now, I did have other financial obligations because I think 6 months after you graduate, like your loan payments were due for your student loans. So I did have student loan payments due, and by that time I got a job, thankfully. But I also had a car payment, which, looking back, was a mistake to have a car payment with like no actual job. But anyway, my parents helped me with that as well, and then when I got a job, I was able to pay them back. Now, the second recession that I experienced was the COVID-19 recession of 2020, which we've all are fully aware of, sadly, because it literally felt like it just happened. But that one, I was financially prepared for it because this is the time. Clearly, I've been in my career now for some years. So I had a job and I had a emergency fund. In fact, ever since I started my financial journey, I had an emergency fund. But my emergency fund was fully funded at this time because I had already paid off my debt. And I think I had 6 or more months worth of emergency fund at the time. So it was good in that regard. Now, in terms of my job, so I, like many people, felt like I was in a recession-proof job, and in some ways I don't believe that exists. Like, even if your job is essential, they will always find a way to do more with less. So you may not be one of the lucky ones that is kept to do your job. But besides that, so I did manage to keep my job, but I was forced to take a pay cut and I lost several benefits, which was very disheartening because I still had to do the same amount of work, but I was getting paid less for it. So it was very, I don't know, it was like dark times all around because it was COVID and everyone was like locked down, and then having to like still work and like get less pay for it was not fun. So that is how the second recession took me by surprise. Yes, I was financially prepared for it, but like emotionally I was not prepared for it, in terms of the fact that realizing that my job was not entirely recession proof and then having my pay cut. So that is what I mean by you cannot be 100% prepared, because every event in life is like different from the last event, you know? So there's that. But you can, of course, try to soften the blow of recessions by having your finances in order. And that is what we're going to talk about today. So in order to prepare for recessions or any financial hardships that may come in the future, one of the things that we need to be thinking about is decreasing our expenses. That basically means cutting back on what you are obligated to spend every month. So say you have $5,000 worth of expenses, like it might be a good idea to like trim that back to $4,000 or to find other ways to cut back. Just in general, one, so you can have more money to save and invest and do other meaningful things, but also so that if you were to lose your job, you don't require as much money to survive. So the best way to cut back on expenses is to find the biggest expenses that you have and cut those back. You can cut back small expenses and they help, like cumulatively, but it's always better or easier to cut the bigger expenses. So let's say rent, you know, you can find a cheaper place to live. Suppose it's not as luxurious as your current place, but at least you're in a better financial place if you don't require as much money for rent. And of course, you also want to think about things that aren't necessary. So things like subscriptions, gym memberships, etc. I mean, those are debatable, clearly, depending on your lifestyle, but I'm sure there's some things that you are paying for monthly that you don't actually need. So you can cut those back, or just know that they're not a necessity and that if you need to, you will have to cut them back in the future. Now, with that in mind, you also want to create a budget that's bare bones so that you know when the time comes what you need to like get rid of. If you don't want to go 100% and cut your expenses back at this point in time, just know what you're going to be needing in the future if you have to. Now, personally, I am always trying to cut my expenses back or keep them low in general, and for the most part my expenses are low, but other things that I'm doing are trying to be more mindful with my money. So you guys probably already know, I've mentioned this several times, but this year is one of my low/no spend years. So there are certain categories that I'm not spending any money in, and I've talked about that in other videos, so I'll link them. Another way that I try to cut back is by focusing on experiences and things that bring me joy and not so much material things. So clearly I love to travel. I make sure to take several trips every year, so I'm willing to spend money on that, but then when I'm at home, I try to not spend money on other things. Like, part of my no spend year is to not buy any clothes, and I love clothes, I love fashion, I like shoes, I like all the things, but I realize that it's expensive. In order for me to do the things that I truly enjoy while also saving money, like, you have to cut back in some way. So that is one of the ways that I've decided to cut back. Also, I try to think about, like, when I'm making purchases, is this something that I absolutely need, something that's going to enhance my life in some way? Do I already have it in some other variation? Do I need another one? Things like that. So that's another way to be mindful of your spending, and in turn you'll effectively decrease it in that way. Now, the other thing that you're also going to need in order to prepare for the recession is, of course, an emergency fund. And I have chatted about emergency funds in another video, so I will link that for you guys. In that video, I talk all about how exactly to save for your emergency fund, how much you may need, etc. And then I also talk about my own emergency fund, as in what my goals are. So after you have an emergency fund in place, the next thing that you should be considering is paying off your high interest debt. So by high interest debt, I mean anything in the double digits. So credit cards, which are often like 20+% APR. That's one to get rid of for sure. Technically, anything that is considered high interest debt is anything above 5% usually, because effectively if you can make more money elsewhere, like for instance in the stock market, which historically returns 7% per year, if you can make more than 7% per year somewhere else, then it is more beneficial for you to put your money there versus paying down debt. So if your loan is 5%, then it's better to just invest that money and get the 7%. Theoretically, clearly, currently we're in a down market, so we've made technically negative 20 something percent. So this is a good time in some ways to pay your high interest debt down, because you're not going to be making that money elsewhere. So there's that. Now, in terms of paying your debt off, the fastest way to do it is by doing a combination of the debt avalanche method and the debt snowball method. So these are the two methods that I use to pay off over $200,000 in student loan debt. Now, how this works is the debt avalanche is effectively ordering your debts from highest interest rate to lowest interest rate, and that's the way that you're going to pay them off. And the reason why this works the fastest is because you're not paying as much to interest, so you're able to pay it off faster, and of course you're able to pay less money. So you're going to want to pay the minimum payment on all your debts, and then you're going to start putting all your extra money towards the highest interest debt. Now, if you have two debts that have the same interest rate, what I do is I pay the smaller of the debts off first, and that's where the debt snowball comes in, because the debt snowball is usually the opposite of this, in that you're ordering your debts from the lowest amount of debt to the highest amount, and then you get small wins by paying it off in that way. However, it doesn't take into consideration the interest rate, so that's how you usually end up paying more, and you don't necessarily pay it off faster. So that's why it's good to combine the two to pay off debt, but definitely stick to the avalanche method. And then if you have similar interest rates, pay off the smaller one first, so you get that quick win and gives you like a dopamine rush and keeps you motivated to like keep going, because let me tell you, paying off debt is no fun, but that is the quickest way to get it done. Now, once you pay off one loan, you're going to use that amount of money or that payment amount from that loan, add it to your snowball payment. So your extra money, your old payments amount plus the current payment, and that is what you're going to use on the next loan in the line, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one. And that is kind of the snowball effect. Now, while I did pay off my student loans and was debt free for a number of years, I did take on debt effectively this year to buy my car, which I did purposely do. Like, I thought about this because the interest rate for my loan is actually quite low, so it's under 2% actually, so I'm not in any rush to pay it, because that money can effectively be used for other purposes, such as increasing my emergency fund amount and investing. So yes, the stock market is on the downward trend, but that also means that the stocks are cheaper than they were, say, earlier in the year. So you're able to get more for less in a way. So if you have your emergency fund in place, if you paid off your high interest debt, then that is a good point in time in which you can start taking advantage of the lower stock market rates. Now, in line with that, we're going to be talking about investing. So in preparation for a recession and during a recession, you want to avoid stopping your particularly retirement saving investments. So lots of people historically, I know specifically during the Great Recession, lots of people took money out of the stock market, and in doing so, you effectively lock in your losses because you did not leave the money in there long enough to recoup what you had lost. So there's that. And you also don't want to lower your contributions if you can help it. You want to take advantage of the cheaper stocks, and you want to take note of the fact that investing in the stock market is a long-term game. So, of course, it depends on how far away you are from retirement, but if you are my age, around a little bit younger, you have plenty of time to recoup those costs. So even if a recession were to come next year, as it's being predicted, you have several more years to recoup that. So there's no need for you to take your money out now, because you cannot time exactly when to put it back in for it to increase. So it's just best to keep it where it is and let it grow. And I know for a fact that this is hard, because 2008 I didn't have any stocks, I didn't have a job. And then 2020, I did have stocks, but it sucked when it dropped. I don't remember how much it dropped. I think it dropped around 30 something percent in 2020. And yeah, it sucks seeing all your money like disappear in the spans of a few weeks, days, etc. But like I said, I was thinking about the long term, so I left my money where it was, and it worked out for me, because from that point up until most recently, the stock market gained over 20%, so a lot of that money was regained at that time. And if I had taken my money back out back then, like, I wouldn't have gotten that 20% return in that time. So that's why it's important to just push through and leave your money where it is. And of course, you know that I personally stand by that, credo or motto to leave your money where it is and think about the long term. And that is what I have been doing. I did for a second think of decreasing my retirement contributions to fund my emergency fund faster. And the reason I didn't do it is because at this time, like, I'm not in a position where I'm going to be losing my job, like, today, tomorrow, and the next month, or whatever. So I still have actual cash set aside, and it's better to continue to contribute while as I said, the stocks are cheaper, and then to just take my time and build my emergency fund with just extra money that I get from my paycheck versus lowering my contributions at this time. So that is why I didn't do it, because sometimes you just have to think about, like, you have to take the emotions out of, like, which is hard, right? You have to take the emotions out of, like, financial decisions and just think logically about what is the best course of action. As that is why I continue to contribute the same amount of money every month, regardless of what's happening right now. And then I'm just going to save as much as I can outside of that. Another thing that you can do to prepare for the recession is, of course, to make yourself less expendable. As in, less likely to be booted out of your job for someone else. And one of the ways that you can do that is, of course, to increase your skills in some way. So perhaps going back, getting another degree, which of course costs money, but there are other ways to, increase your professional ranking. Like, I know a very popular nowadays, there are lots of certificates, especially in IT, for you to take that can actually put you into another career. Like, I know there are boot camps, those also cost money, but they're less than a traditional, say, 4-year degree. So think about where you are now, where you want to be, or some other job that you would like doing that is in high demand, or something like that, and consider, moving up your career ladder in that way. And of course, you can also do things within your own, say, field to make yourself more marketable. So along the same lines, getting certificates, getting degrees, learning a new skill in that particular field, or something like that. Now, for me personally, I'm not doing anything in particular, because some of these things are already built into what I do for work, so I need to stay up to date on things, and I do that every year. And in terms of moving up my own career ladder, like, I'm basically at the top in that way. There are other things that I can delve into, but I don't want to do them. Like, for instance, I could go into management, but I do not want to be a manager. Because if you guys don't already know, like, I'm trying to segue out of working full time, and definitely, like, in a greater capacity. Like, that's not in my particular interest. And that brings me to, like, another point about preparing for recessions. Like, I don't want to live my life from a point of fear or what ifs anymore. Like, I've done that in the past, and I mean, in a way, it has helped me to get to where I am now, right? But now that I'm a little bit more secure financially and whatnot, I want to just do things that make me happy. So Even though I could be working towards some higher career goal to be at the ultimate top and make the most money, like it would not make me happy, so I won't be doing that. So these are the kind of things you need to take into considerations. Like, I feel that I'm prepared. Okay, so my video cut off and I didn't realize until I was editing. So we're gonna try to continue with the same thought process, even though I basically forgot what I was saying. But I think I was trying to say that I'm basically prepared to work a job outside of my field if I needed to, because I have a very low cost of living and my current job basically pays for my cost of living, and fortunately for me it allows me to do more. But if I needed to, I could work a job that only pays for my cost of living so that I can make it through the recession or whatnot. And then once things are better, then I can go back into my actual field. Additionally, I feel that I have other marketable or sellable skills in some way. Like, for instance, I do YouTube on the side, so I know how to edit videos. I know how to film. I know about photography. I know how to do other things digitally. So in some ways, I have that to expand upon and to make a living off eventually. Right now, I don't, but soon. I should be able to. So basically, those are the ways that you can prepare for a recession and some of the things that I plan to do. Of course, let me know if you have other ideas on ways to prepare or other things that you have done. Put them in the comments below and I look forward to reading them. I will see you guys in the next video.